Hello, everyone. Happy holidays to anybody who is celebrating. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link to join if you'd like to in the comments on LinkedIn. And yeah, I have a couple of things that I'd like to talk about today, just as we kind of wrap up the year and, get ready to kind of slow down a little bit these next couple of weeks, whether you celebrate any holidays right around now, or, you're just kind of like riding the wave of everybody else's celebrations. I always feel like this time of year is just kind of like quiet and slow. And funny enough, we work in cybersecurity and IT, where that sometimes seems like the opposite of what anybody that's like adversarial is doing, because they know a lot of people celebrate holidays around this time. So it seems like a lot of times a lot of breaches happen around this time. Log4j, SolarWinds, all happen about the holidays, the end of the year type thing, because people, get into the slow holiday mindset of getting, relaxed and comfortable. And then we get a little bit of lax in our cybersecurity posture, our IT, our SOC analysts kind of like have checked out a little bit. So it's a psychological thing. But yeah, it's definitely never a good time to slow down in cybersecurity, but it's important to take some time to yourself. I will be going and doing some much needed like decompression. Yep, threat actors don't sleep. They are like ever vigilant. They know that people in the US celebrate Christmas and New Year's. And so that's when they just like seem to get after our stuff. I don't know if it's the same in other countries, but I can speak from experience that is like the darn truth. I know that thus far I've been keeping a watchful eye and seeing what's kind of going on in the world. I did see China was there was allegedly some Chinese state actors that were targeting United States government infrastructure and things like that. I don't think that they ever really got a big foothold, but yeah, that they're moving. I got Thai food today for lunch. The thing that I kind of like about this is that I am kind of forced to go in my community and try new foods. I'm trying to not go to a restaurant that I've already been to. Obviously, I did Chipotle first because I love Chipotle, but that was just to kick it off. So yeah, I got some Thai food. Hopefully you guys are, at least if you're not eating now, hopefully you get a good lunch later. I did, like I said, I put the link in the comments if anybody wants to join. Otherwise, cat tags. Yeah, we got a new cabinet. And now it's like where the books are, but it's also where our cats eat some of their food, just to keep it off the floor, because we have dogs and kids. And so I don't want them eating all of the cat food. So now they're like all going to be in the background of my videos, and that's fine. It's okay. I have 4. So, and we have 2 dogs, and we just have a whole farm here. So, yeah, so I wrote down in my like phone notes what I wanted to chat about, but y'all bring up some topics too. I just felt like it was good to come in with a couple of prompts. So I posted a Mimi Cats, kind of, I don't know what you would call it. I wouldn't, maybe a reference guide. It's just a little 4-pager with some useful commands. It's very similar to what I did with my Elastic Stack, where I tried to basically give a visual representation of what is actually going on when you're conducting Mimikatz. Some commands. You obviously do have to have admin access before you do a lot of these commands, but it's useful knowledge to have no matter what. And I think that it's important to really have a wide breadth of knowledge, even if you never use cats. Like, it's good to know, because if you're not using it in an offensive security engagement, if you're a SOC analyst, you might see a binary that's similar. So knowing I always like to say, like, knowing what the offense is doing helps me be a better, like, defense analyst. I still think that that's true. So I think it's just good to share the wealth of knowledge. But I share a lot of, like, offensive security tips and like tools and things that I know and that I've used and like part of my experience. But one thing that I've been thinking about recently, and I don't know if anybody has had this thought in their head about me in particular, um, but I don't have any offset certifications. I don't have any SANS certifications that are offensive security. I have, my standard CISP and things like that. I have CEH, which is really not super relevant, but it's part of a DoD requirement in some cases. So I wanted to kind of comment on that really quickly, and I will touch on the Flipper Zero. That's a good question. Um, but I wanted to touch on that because that's not like I'm necessarily like ashamed or don't really feel like I am credible enough to speak about offensive security. I worked for the US military and the DoD for several years, and sometimes there's just things that we can't talk about that we've done. And so my experiences and my lack of certifications don't necessarily correlate to like me not being intelligent on certain like tools and things like that. I've seen people make comments online, not about me, but just in general, like, oh, you can't learn pen testing from someone that wasn't ever a pen tester. You can't learn, offensive security from someone that doesn't have OffSec certs. And I don't think that's true at all. Um, my personal experience with utilizing offensive security tools and like going in through those engagements, like, I'm not going to share all of my experience with you because, for one, I'm the type of person that I would like to let my profile and my portfolio speak for itself. But now I do feel like now that I'm out of the military, I'm behind the learning curve of, I don't have OffSec certs. So I'm starting with my OSDA right now because I'm in a blue team role currently, but I have a lot of offensive security experience. So I wanted to kind of like bridge that gap. So I think that that's really interesting. Like, do you think that when you're learning from people, if they don't necessarily have like the certifications, but maybe they have been in roles or are self learners? I don't know. What do you think? That's like, I always think back to like John Hammond decided to start out, like, hey, I just want to learn some new skills. And now he is like a really big, like, he puts out a lot of content on offensive security and hacking and tools and stuff like that. And I think that's really cool. He's very much a self-taught, content creator. So I don't know, I feel like I'm playing catch up. Maybe it's a little bit of imposter syndrome because I think that when people say, oh, how are you going to tell me to pass the OSCP when you don't have the OSCP? Like, that's a fair assumption. Like, I get that. And I definitely would feel the same way. But providing a justification when you're trying to share like a wealth of knowledge with people doesn't really make sense. And I'm sure it's a little bit of a gatekeeper mentality as well with some people. It's just personalities, but I don't know. It's just, yeah, anyone can memorize and take tests. That's how I've got, like, other than the CISP and the PMP, because those require certain like levels of experience. I would say that a lot of my certifications were just sit down and study and read a book and highlight stuff and memorize it and go take the test on it. Security Plus, that was my first one, and I had never had an IT role before. A lot of these certifications that I had and have were required for DoD, to work in the DoD. So, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, you can do something that's set to a standard. And I think people rag on offsec certs a lot and they're like, oh, they're too expensive, they're making money, and they're profiting off of people's inability to pass a test. It's like you are entitled to feel that way, but it's a standard that's set by the industry. And right now, offsec is the industry standard for like offensive security certs, like the OSCP. I feel like if you have that, like it's very much um a green flag on your resume. It may not, it's not going to get you the job, but it looks good to have. Um, yeah, and I do like the hands-on certifications more. CEH is I have it, DoD requirements, but I do not feel at all like it is worth the effort when it comes to, it doesn't show your practical knowledge of being a certified ethical hacker or a hacker or whatever. So anyway, yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. Gonna go back to the Flipper Zero. Do I think it's fad or functional? I think that it is about as functional as its use by the person that's purchasing it and using it. Is it a fad? Yes, because people are buying it in a relatively large quantity right now because it is new and it's newly available. I don't know what it was like when the Raspberry Pi came out, but I'm sure that there was a big um, following behind that as well. I mean, it's a new technology, right? And so it's all of it is useful, all of it is functional. Um, is it fatty right now? Yes, because it's new, it's like fresh. People are learning new things that they can do with it. But once that kind of settles down a little bit, I'm sure that the use of the Flipper Zero will kind of dwindle out. Just like people will still use it, like they still use Raspberry Pis, and there's a ton of stuff you can do with Raspberry Pis, but it won't be as such a bulk of people using it to find all of the new things that they can do with it, because the number of new things that you can figure out to do with it will dwindle down. Yeah, exactly, like the Hack 5, the Wi-Fi, yeah, the pineapple. I was trying to think of another tool that I can't think of off the top of my head, but they're all like, they all come out in a craze because they're new. And I do think they're functional, and I think that they are like really cool. I don't have one personally, but I think they're really cool, and maybe I'll get one in the future. But right now, I'm not a big jump into the fad type person, just because I've got other things that I've got on like my mind of projects to do. And so if I add more stuff to my plate, I'll never get through any of them. CRTO. Oh goodness, that is some spicy soup. Is that's the certified red team operator. I mean, I think it is just as I think it's just as relevant as the TCM security, your EJPTs, those offensive security certifications. They show that you have competency in a large portion of like offensive security. Do I think that right now, and to be unbiased, and it's only because the industry has set this standard right now, OffSec has the industry standard for offensive security certifications, but that does not negate having other offensive security certifications as being valuable. And I definitely like the red team operator courses and things like that. And I've seen Hack the Box has gotten really heavy on their courses and certifications as well. So I would definitely go for those, especially if you're really just not like, I don't have OffSec certifications because I just didn't feel like I needed them. I was doing the jobs that I wanted to do. So I didn't need OffSec certifications to land roles because the military was giving them to me. However, if you are looking for roles that are specifically looking for offensive security like certifications, oftentimes they now have like must have one of the following: OSCP, or the SANS, like this GX certification, or something else. So I see the industry drifting away from OffSec. So like you should definitely get the red team operator course. And let me clarify for anybody that doesn't know, pen testing, vulnerability assessment or scanning, and red teaming are three different offensive security types. They are not the same. A pen tester is not a red teamer. They have concepts of things that like mesh into the same categories, but to sum it up in a nutshell, a red teamer is someone that's going to go in and they're looking for, a vulnerability. The first vulnerability they find, they're going to try to get like as deep as they possibly can into that network through like that vulnerability or something else. Where a penetration tester is more, I would say a red teamer is more of like looking vertically into the network where they're trying to get as deep as possible, where a pen tester is maybe more looking for like a lot of the tools and things like that a company uses, that they might be able to get like a horizontal view of and then go in, but they might not get fully into the network. They're more getting like, midway through based on the amount of time that they have to do that assessment. And then a vulnerability assessment is really just that linear horizontal platform of what are all of your tools that are vulnerable. A pen tester is going to find all of those tools and then try to exploit them, but a vulnerability assessor or scanner is just going to find the tools that are vulnerable and just say, here's your vulnerable tool set, here's a report on it, how to fix it. And if I misspoke, or if anybody has any additional insight on that, please share. But that is something that is a lot like misconception. So when you're talking about doing like a junior pen tester certification and a red team certification, having both of those looks great because you're not certifying yourself on the same thing over and over again. You're certifying yourself as a pen tester, but you also understand that there's a methodology for red team operations, and there is a certain structure and a certain way that red teams operate on systems. So I would go for both of those. You said you're going to take the EJPT, so definitely look at the red team. I would probably recommend that over taking like another pen testing course if it wasn't like a senior one. Like you can do a junior, a senior, or whatever. But instead of doing like a junior pen tester at one company and then another junior pen testing certification at another company, like I would broaden your certification goals, like you are looking at what you're doing. To reiterate what you are doing, I would agree with. I think that you are on the right track. I get so winded talking because I'm like looking at my food and I'm like, oh man, food is good, but like I only have such little time here. And then I always spend the next hour actually eating my food. But yeah, hey, we're all here. We're all serving a purpose here. Mm. So some other things I wanted to talk about. If you guys don't have anything else, I didn't see anything that I have missed in the comments. So I really like doing these digital products for you guys, the Mimikatz, the Elk Stack, products that are just really informational, that have value as educational tools, but can also be referenced back to later. And I'd love to figure out some way to capitalize on using my skills. Like obviously I will be doing that and posting for, free on LinkedIn and on my other social media. But if I were to try to monetize something where I'm creating like a booklet of things like that, or something that would be of value to purchase, do you think that there is anything that the market is lacking, that might be good to kind of tap into? And the answer can be no, because I'm all about free educational resources, but we all want to, figure out ways to like monetize our skill sets. And if you can do things that you love and make money off of it, like that's wonderful. Other options that I've looked at too is once I get to actually streaming on YouTube, trying to, get some sponsorships and things like that. So I'm just trying to figure out a way forward in 2024. But I wanted to get y'all's insight on like if you think that there are things like that, or things that the community is lacking that might be something that you would want to see from someone with like my skill set. Um, I don't know. I was just thinking about that. I think it's always important to have a little bit to a little bit of I have a great job and I love what I do, but it's always good to have, something that you're doing that takes you away from your job, and you can still like make some money off of, or just do something for the community, things like that. Would I take speaking engagements? Yeah, I've definitely looked at I should have done it this year, but to be honest, this year just hasn't really been my boss at Google told me that sometimes we're in seasons of, growth, and sometimes we're in seasons of comfort where it's just not a good time to try to expand and do a bunch of different things. And I had a baby earlier this year. And so I've been taking kind of this 2023 to just slow roll everything. And so, as I was saying, like in 2024 is kind of something that I'd like to um, get back into like the community much more heavily now that I've taken the time to do my maternity leave, and like after the holidays start to roll around, picking back up in 2024 would be a great time. And so I went to B-Sides Augusta this year and saw some of my friends and saw some of other people that I had never met have some amazing like talks and conversations and presentations. And I thought it was so cool and inspiring. And like these are my friends and my peers that are doing these awesome things. I was like, wow, I should really do that. So yeah, I am definitely looking at um, doing things like that come post holidays. I would absolutely be interested in doing that. I like doing in-person stuff because it's just nice to be able to meet someone face to face and shake hands. I'm definitely a more personal person when it comes to like networking and meeting people, but these web conferences are so valuable as well because not everybody can pay to travel to these security conferences. And so this opens a door for other people that may not necessarily have the time or the resources to go to all of these security conferences to be able to engage with the community as well. So I think that that is really awesome. And I'm just reading this comment. It's just super helpful. Proof of concepts. I also am a hands-on learner. I love watching people actually do it. I think the biggest thing that stresses me out when I am looking at a tool that I'm not familiar with or can't quite figure out how to do something is there are steps that a lot of times tutorials, like not tutorials necessarily, but when you go on some of these blog posts and these articles and they're like, this is how you hack, wet or WPA2, there's steps that they leave out because they can't, it's just that's a lot of information, but it's like very, very minute steps. That's like, if you don't understand what you're doing, you could get really caught up in like trying to figure out what the problem is, and then you start to get flustered. It's something small, like you didn't like you should be expected to bring your Wi-Fi interface up if you're hacking Wi-Fi on monitor mode, but maybe they didn't say that in their, article that they wrote. But it's maybe self-explanatory, but for a very, very beginner person, it's not. And so, yeah, I also like doing um, the relation between the offensive security tool and how to mitigate like threats from that. I always try to implement that near the end of anything that I'm doing. Trying to make sure that not only am I teaching offensive security tools and sharing how to do things very step by step and granular, but also saying, like, okay, so you did this, but what if you're on the other side of things? How can you see that work on your end? And then what do you do about it? Because there's an ethical dilemma when it comes to teaching offensive security tools and like thinking through like, oh, we all want to be pen testers and stuff. And so everybody's putting out all of this content on offensive security tools. And that's awesome. But there's also a need in the industry to be able to understand how to identify and mitigate those things. Why I really like purple teaming, because the information that the red team can find out informs the blue team and vice versa. So they are not like, a purple team isn't really a good definition of what you would think like those two things combined would. It's really just elements of a red team and elements of a blue team feeding information to each other and kind of like going through this cyclic process, rather than being like a team of both like offensive and defensive minded people. Like, you're not going to necessarily always have people that are fluent in blue team and fluent in red team. There are people out there that do that, but it's not necessarily one of those things that is true to the purple team at all times. It's typically more of a process rather than a team. Or no, it is a team. It's a process, more of a process than a role. Like, a purple teamer isn't necessarily a role, it's a mindset. Red informing blue and vice versa. So I always try to put that in there because I work blue team spaces. And so I have the intelligence to use my current role and my current position to showcase like these offensive security tools. And honestly, I think that the red team and pen testers are like, I mean, I'm cliche. I do think that the best defense is a good offense, but take that for what you will. Everybody has their own opinion about it. I do like that concept, and I'm gonna go to my grave with it. So yeah. What else can we chat about? So I had someone call me the other day, just out of the blue. I was sitting in my kitchen and they said, hey, do you have a moment? And I said, sure. This is someone that I know. I was like, sure. What's up? And they were like, I'm sitting here with this other individual. We're talking about fishing, like pH fishing. And I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, you're calling me. You're not calling me to talk about bass and trout. And they're like, we can't wrap our heads around how someone can not only impersonate someone in an email, but actually get the credentials and do like all of these things. Like, we just don't understand why it's such a threat. And like, what, like, we know it is, we understand that it is a threat, and we're very diligent to not do some of the things that like are, don't open email attachments and don't click on links and stuff, but we can't understand like the background of like how this is possible, like how someone can make an email that looks like it's coming from Microsoft and spoof stuff like that. And I was like thinking to myself, what an elementary topic to me, but these people that I was speaking to work in education. And so they're like, we understand that there is a threat, and that there's stuff that we can do to prevent it, but they wanted more information on like I do understand. I always like the how, behind the what, like the why and the how behind the what. Like, tell me. I always hated when growing up when people were like, do something because I told you to. It's like, but why? Like, I want to understand what the purpose is for what you're telling me to. And so I could kind of relate to them asking me this question. And so I spent probably about 10 minutes talking them through phishing. And now I have the hiccups. Talking to them about phishing and telling them basically, what it was, how they could how people could spoof emails, things to look for in their emails or text messages or social media requests that they were receiving. And then they were like, you know, I could hear it in their like speech afterwards. They were just like blown away. They're like, yeah, some of that stuff I kind of knew, but some of the stuff I didn't know. And I was like, I'm just thinking to myself, like, I feel like this is knowledge that should be way more like I feel like we preach to the choir so much about phishing and things like that. And there are still people out there that just don't understand or don't know that there's actually a threat. And so I wanted to ask, like, are there other things that you guys have seen where you're like, this should be common knowledge and it's not? And it's okay that these people don't understand that. Like, that's what IT and security professionals are here for. But for me, that is just like super elementary. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, how is this small nugget of information still not being like passed around like to businesses? Um, and like their business isn't small. It's small, but it's not like minuscule. But there are huge companies that still don't understand the concepts. And I was speaking to someone recently that said, that there are companies that have CEOs and CISOs like make decisions for certain like security things when they have a whole SOC team and they have like the CEO does not like know what the SOC team is doing. And yet they're like, the question was like, oh, who makes this decision for, SOCs and stuff? And they're like, oh, well, the CEO like does this and they declare, they're the ones that declare a breach and blah, blah, blah. It's like, the CEO does not have time for that. Like, if you're thinking about like a really big corporation, like the CEO just like does not have time to be meddling around in like the IT and security features of their company. Yeah, I am. To your comment, Andrew, about being blown away by cyber topics, my husband. So I used to be, and I guess I still am, do a lot of like wireless pen testing, and some of that involves Bluetooth pen testing. And my husband has a medical device, and so I was like, I can see your medical device like in my like on my Uber tooth. And he's like, I swear to God, if you hack me, like I was like, there's too many ethical problems behind that. And two, like I don't want to like send a shock of something and like accidentally off my husband. That would be horrible. So like that's not a problem, but the fact that those things can happen, I always think about high level leadership in governments with things like, they're older. And so a lot of them have like pacemakers and things like that. And I always just get this kind of ick about thinking how their devices and things like that can be exploited by people who are not doing things for good. And so, but I explain that to people and they're like, no way, like that's not possible. I'm like, well, it's possible because like I'm sitting here showing you, I can see the channel traffic going through like on my computer right now. So like things are possible, and that makes it really scary. That's probably up there on my list of scaries with IT or no OTICS security, like talking about securing your water and nuclear plants and things like that from cyber attacks. Like those things go down, that's terrifying to me. Yeah, I agree with this comment. um, I think that it gets them thinking too about um, what the adversary or whoever is behind that phishing email is maybe looking for. I get these emails often now. It used to be where you would get a phishing email and it would be like, here's your Microsoft one-time password, and you're like, I didn't request a password, and you look at who the email's from and it's like Microsoft@gmail.com or something. Like those to me are pretty obvious. Like they're not good emails. They're phishing for some sort of credentials. They want you to log in. But I've had these emails recently that will come in and they're spam emails. So they go straight to my spam folder. But every so often I'll check my spam folder just in case I've missed something. And there's like an email with like two lines of sentence. And then it has like, a PDF or something. And I'm like, what are you looking for from me? Because you didn't provide me a link. You basically they're not sending phishing emails the way that they used to, because now they're like, hey, here's your invoice. Thanks for purchasing this, whatever, with Microsoft, here's your invoice. And like that doesn't seem malicious, but they send you a PDF and you open that PDF, and some malicious code, when it opens that PDF on your desktop, now has a remote desktop running in your background. And now they've set up, some sort of malware in that PDF file. But that's like pretty crafty, because we say like, oh, don't open the links, don't open things that have like grammar errors and stuff. But piquing the curiosity of people, they're like, oh, what did I buy? Like, I want to see, like, did I accidentally buy something? Or, like maybe this isn't for me because maybe the address is wrong and this was sent to the wrong email. So they'll open the PDF because they're curious. Because the email leaves nothing to identify like what the purpose of the email is, other than, hey, here's your invoice. So I'm like, you guys are getting pretty crafty with the way it's like people who do phishing scams are not are identifying that we are teaching people to avoid certain things. So now they're collectively trying different things that don't look like a normal phishing scam that we've taught other people to avoid. Yeah. I have seen stuff like this. It's pretty easy, actually. And it's even worse in small businesses, because you can have a small business that is worth millions of dollars. Like, think of a lot of blue collar jobs that have they're small town, but they're like HVAC, they're plumbing, they are electricians. Those are very lucrative jobs and they pay a lot. If you've ever had an HVAC, um, if someone come out and fix your HVAC, you know that it costs a ton of money. But they're like small town people with small town, mentalities, thinking like it's not going to happen to me. I'm from Paris, Texas, and this is a small town. And like, if I don't live in New York City or Atlanta, Georgia, like, I'm not going to get targeted because, nobody knows who I am anyway, outside of like my small community. Um, and so, like, these companies can be worth a lot of money and have a lot of money in assets. And more than likely, they're probably only using one financial institution. And so it just takes one email or one, low security Wi-Fi access point. They don't know how to set up their guest network if they have one at their office. And then now they're getting all of their stuff dumped. And it's like, your Uncle Bobby who like has maybe a flip phone, like a Nokia flip phone, and like doesn't really do anything technology whatsoever, but suddenly he opened an email or he set up his Wi-Fi wrong, and someone like got into it. And it doesn't always necessarily have to be like, a lot of times I think we hear about the small town Texas thing, because I'm from a small town in Texas and I'm like thinking about the businesses that I know and grew up with. And that's exactly like, those are the types of people that I'm thinking of right off the bat, is like, people just don't understand. But you think, oh, well, we talk about Russia a lot. We talk about Iran and China and these different nation state actors. You don't have to be from a different country or a nation state actor to want to go hack someone's stuff to steal their money. You can have someone locally in Atlanta, Georgia, that just happens to have, the gall and the skills to go in and say, hey, I'm poor, I'm in need of money, I whatever, and go and target these small businesses or target, a different business. It doesn't always have to be this like big nation state actor that's like, some name that Microsoft has named, like Sandstorm and things like that. Like, it's not always necessarily these like big foreign actors. Yeah, Shodan is scary. That is a like terrifying place when it comes to IoT, and I should probably do a little bit more talk on here on LinkedIn about IoT devices, but oh my goodness, they are like the worst, and they're so convenient for people. But they are so insecure, in especially if you don't know how to set them up the right way. You put them behind a firewall and then segment them separately from like your actual net, like have a segment of your network that is just IoT devices and put that behind a firewall, and disable default credentials and stuff like that. I mean, the number of default credentials that I have found in engagements of large organizations is shocking and painful, to say the least. So I encourage you to change your default credentials. If your router's password for your admin at 192.168.1.1 is still Cisco and Cisco, you should probably change that. Admin and admin too, or administrator and administrator. Yeah. I mean, that just goes to show like and people don't understand that this falls in the same category with spam text messages, smishing. People get text messages all the time because now we've got, all of your options for doing your single sign-on passwords, they'll send a text message to you. And so people will fall for that trap. They'll also fall for, I've received text messages from Square, for example. Square has my phone number set up, so every time I swipe my card, I get my receipt to my phone. And it's like, hey, you made a Square payment to this place, and it's like linked somewhere in their database. And that could easily be changed where it's like, hey, you made a Square payment to this, but it's like from a false number and it's a link. And say you weren't out, it was like while you were asleep. And so you're like, oh no, did my card get stolen? You want to click it. You want to click the link that's in your text message because you're like, what did I buy? Where was it bought? Did I lose my card, or does someone have my credentials? And then you just open stuff up on your computer or on your phone, and now you've got malware. Oh, yeah. And so, yeah, I looked at the word LastPass and like tried to sustain my eye roll, but yeah. So I have a friend who used their I have several friends that use LastPass, and when that whole situation happened where they were compromised, it was like this whole frenzy to figure out how to, change all their passwords, and then it's like, well, now I don't trust any hiccups again. Now I don't trust any other corporations to like keep my passwords, and people are so reliant on them developing like a random password for you. So I have several passwords that I use, but I've got like a photographic memory, and not everybody is like that. And for me, it's sometimes I will get caught up and I will forget what password is for what login, but most of the time I'll figure out, okay, it wasn't this one, it was one of the other 50 that I've got in my head. And you've got to think about like, well, if you're creating like 50 passwords and they all should be different, they should all have capitalization, lowercase, numbers, symbols, some sort of variation. Someone once told me that the best way that they remembered how to create a strong password is they made up a story. And I thought that was really interesting. They're like, my name is this, I have these many pets and their names are this, and I have 4 kids and I was married in this year or something. And they would put like their name or their initials or their initial, and they would say like, I have 2 cats, so it'd be like 2, like the number 2, and then like the cat's name or like the initials of the cats, and then like some other numbers that related to certain things in their life, and then add just like like their favorite symbol. Like everybody loves the exclamation point, but you can do like asterisks, and most of the time you can do pound signs and things like that. Just whatever the login allows, because sometimes they don't actually allow exclamation points. But yeah, they are like, that was a really good way to do it, because you don't necessarily always have to use words. And if you're thinking about like it in a story format, like that makes a lot of sense, because now you're thinking through like this, what would look like a random mashup of letters and numbers and symbols, but it actually is meaningful to you. So I liked that. Music lyrics is also a good one too. That makes a lot of sense as well. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes sometimes people have to write down their passwords, especially if you get like towards a crowd that, there are people that are aging, but there are also people that just don't have like great memory. And so is that the best way to do things? No, but it's risk versus, it's a risk factor. We can't always bring risk down to 0. So it's whatever works best. but also reduces the risk as much as possible, and updating them frequently. Like, that makes a lot of sense. Nimbus ID, that is not something that I've heard of, but I'll have to check them out. They're so are they like LastPass, um, where they save your credentials? Yeah, let me know because that sounds interesting. Um, I feel like that's probably not, because if we're talking about dogging LastPass, then maybe that wasn't LastPass's way that they do things was probably not the best, or at least their security was not the best. Maybe they should have used their own security mechanisms protecting their own passwords. I don't know, and I never looked up to see what their what caused the breach. I just knew that they did get breached. Oh, okay, that's cool. So this is what Nimbus ID is. And I also like multi-factor authentication. Obviously, you need 2 factors of identification authentication because it's just better security practice. But sometimes it does get really tedious. So they use stories that are unique to you. That's really cool. I like that a lot because that's basically what I was just saying, that like about like creating a story in your head or like making it into something that's meaningful to you. So maybe go check out Nimbus if you are Nimbus ID if you're looking for something new. Okay, we are rounding out like the last few minutes. Anything else anybody wants to chat about? Before I take off, whatever else I have on my list. Oh, they were using a Plex server. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, no wonder they got compromised. Ugh, I hate Plex servers. I found so many Plex servers on like official like company company networks. Every time I see a Plex server, I'm just like, why? Put it on a different network. If you really need a Plex server, put it on a different network. That's crazy. So kind of rounding back out to phishing, I did see this article yesterday, the day before, and maybe it was on LinkedIn, but someone was saying that they were the article was basically talking about phishing and saying that a lot of people that are conducting phishing scams might not actually be doing it on their own like volition. Like, it, you think about like human trafficking and things like that, and basically they were saying that they were being coerced to do these phishing scams on behest of like these other organizations. And I thought that was really crazy, but that kind of makes a lot of sense, because they come out in droves. These phishing scams and these emails come out in droves. And I'm sure there are organizations and people that just do it because they want to, because they're looking for some trouble to get into. But I thought that was a really unique take on like scams and people calling, like these call centers that like try to, I think that was a big topic in this article, was not necessarily the email phishing, but like the vishing, where you're getting phone calls like with fake, hey, this is Bank of America, and we, found a fraudulent thing on your charge, or a fraudulent charge on your card. Can you verify your password and stuff? And it was basically talking about how people in these like call centers and things like that, like they're all being coerced in some way, whether or not it's like, I don't know. Think about like a lot of the mining operations for like data mining, where it's like huge numbers of servers and like huge. There's also another one that's for social media, where they will have like a room full of phones that are all automated, like they're all bots, and they're all like giving likes and comments on these posts online all at one time to like change the algorithm. And so it's just like that, but with people like in these like facilities that are conducting these scams, and not necessarily, and maybe they're doing it because it's like a job. Maybe it's like a call center job where, like in that, it's not the ethical job, but like they need to make money, and they are like, this is the way that they could make their money. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting and kind of crazy, because it's really sad that we live in a world where people feel like they have to scam other people um, to make a living. Like, that's really unfortunate. And a lot of times I'm sure that these people have like ulterior motives. It's not necessarily always about money, but they could be getting like blackmailed and stuff because of, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in other countries that just like blows my mind, and people getting rounded up in these like big wide scams just because they're trying to make a living. um yeah, I've had the police fund to donate to the police fund, and then I've also had where there's a warrant out for my arrest. um And yeah, I truly do not really answer phone calls from numbers that I don't have in my phone. And I let them go to voicemail, because in my thought, it's like, if I have your number and you have mine, like, then there's obviously a reason. But if you don't have my number, or I don't have, if, excuse me, if I don't have your number, there's obviously a reason I didn't save your number. Therefore, I'm not going to answer your phone call unless you leave a voicemail. I get really skittish when it comes to like voice calls, because also I just don't want to get stuck on the phone with someone where I'm like, no, thank you. Like, I don't want to buy this thing. I don't want to donate. Like, I don't want to vote for whatever at this next town election. Like, I just I don't want to talk to people. Maybe that's the introvert in me. Um, yeah, that's really weird. They changed the maps, like on Google Maps algorithm, to like show a traffic jam, because they had like 100 different phones um in like one location, like pulling it with like a shopping cart or something. That's hilarious. Uh yeah, it's getting too easy to manipulate technology nowadays, and that makes me wary. But to be perfectly honest, you have to have a level of skepticism, but not in a way that's going to make you um like unwilling to try new things, and unwilling to do things that you would otherwise have done. um it's always about risk and reducing your risk, and making sure that what you are doing and what phone calls you've decided to answer are worth, your time, even if it's just explaining to them that you don't want to donate to their firefighter police fund that day. Um, yeah, it's, I don't know. Technology is convenient, but it's also in yeah, technology is convenient, but also like incredibly obnoxious. So here's the link for, thank you, Daniel, for that the there's the link for that them pulling the phones down and causing a traffic jam. That is too funny. I truly didn't hear about that, but as I'm reading your comment, um, it was not surprising at all that they did that. Like, that's hilarious. The Thai food is good as usual. Still eating on it. I have eaten one half of a spring roll and like some soup. So I guess that means that I need to go and finish my food, and y'all should as well. If you have the time to get something nice to eat this weekend or just do something relaxing, you should. Um, but hopefully, we'll do this again in January. And I hope that if you're traveling during this time, be safe, please. Make sure that you turn off your Bluetooth and turn off your Wi Fi unless you're using it. And yeah, everybody just have a happy holidays. And if you're not celebrating anything at this time, that's totally fine. Just have a nice next couple of weeks to decompress. And I'll see you in the new year. I'll still be posting stuff on LinkedIn, but we'll chat again soon. See ya.